If you have ever been frustrated that your leaders on your team are not stepping up to lead, or the people that actually are leading your team are the ones that you would prefer not to, but it's just like they're the loudest, maybe have the most magnetic personalities, but aren't really making the best decisions, then this day is for you. We are talking about the leadership core and how to develop players who actually lead. Now, developing players who actually lead and don't just have the title, we're going to break it down. We're talking today about the biggest mistake that us coaches make when it comes to leadership positions on our team, how to develop your leaders based on their strengths, and implementing the leadership core. So the leadership core was another game-changing thing that I've implemented in my program that really helps develop leaders and gives them specific roles. I am Bre, if I have not met you. I'm the co-founder of the Elite Competitor. I am also a head volleyball coach. I've been coaching for 14 years. I'm here in Washington State. If you're following along in the playbook, this is in there. Leadership is a skill that can be developed, not a trait. Yes, some athletes, some people naturally have personality traits that lend themselves to the leadership qualities that we see in our society as valuable, right? So those of you that have athletes that are more extroverted or loud or whatever, like our society kind of naturally gravitates towards those people as leaders. But here's the thing. Leadership at its core is a skill that we can develop, not necessarily a trait that you either have or don't have. And I think it goes without saying that, just because an athlete is quiet or more introverted doesn't mean that they're not a leader. Okay. We all know that as coaches, but because we as a collective whole tend to gravitate towards the people who are loudest and most gregarious, sometimes these other athletes who have personalities that don't lend themselves to those things kind of don't really know their place or know how to lead. And the biggest mistake that coaches make when it comes to leadership is just assuming it's going to happen naturally. And I totally do this too. I'm like, hey, you're the captain now, go for it, and just assuming that they know what that means, assuming that they even are aware of what their leadership style is or how they influence their team. And so we just kind of, okay, I guess I'll speak for myself. I just kind of assumed that these upperclassmen, like once you become a senior or a junior, like you're leading now. And once you are a captain, like you're the leader. And I just kind of assume that they're going to know what that means and that it would happen naturally. Okay. But it doesn't. If you haven't already figured that out, yeah, I mean, at least that was my experience. Okay. And most leadership problems aren't really about effort. Like, I think that at their core, like our athletes want to be leaders and they want to know how to lead. They're about unclear expectations for how to do this. Okay. And most athletes don't step up because they don't know how. And so chime in the chat. What has your experience been with the leaders on your team or the people that you are expecting to lead? Has anyone had that similar experience where it's like, hey, you should be leading, but they're not? Like they're not leading in the way that in your mind you were expecting. Like they're either not a vocal leader, they're not leading by their example, or maybe the people who are actually taking lead of your team are the people that are like, oh gosh, like that's not exactly what I was hoping or envisioning. So let me know in the chat what your experience has been as we continue in with this. So most athletes, though, as you probably have noticed, they don't step up because they're not really sure how. They're like not sure their place or anything like that. Okay. Yeah, Julie, the leaders who should be leading seem to be timid. The true leaders are not the ones we want, and they're the drama seekers. Yeah. Had some confused leading with being angry or mean. Yeah, David, I'm glad you brought that up. Okay. They're afraid that their teammates will stop being friends with them if they hold them accountable. Right. Very, very good. I have a great administrative leader, not very vocal. Nice. Okay. Not nice, that we have situations like this that we're having to kind of wade through, but nice that yeah, this is good. This is exactly what we're going to be talking about. One of each. Seeing growth, you're right. I had to teach and suggest some things. The other is definitely timid, struggle with having players being natural leaders. Once coaches call attention to it, they shy away. Yeah. And there's a lot of these peer dynamics because I think somebody said in there, like, they don't want their peers to think that they're being mean to them, by either holding them to a standard or saying something. Okay. They do what they want instead of setting the tone for the culture. Upperclassmen expect to step into leadership roles just because of the time served. Yeah. With our leader not being a team player and our teammates were afraid of her. Oh yeah, I've definitely dealt with that. I can tell you lots of good stories about that if we want to dive into that in the Q&A tomorrow. Okay. But like you said, a lot of, other people take over and then they end up hurting the culture a little bit. And then the captains feel pressure, but they don't really have the tools. Now, I'm not going to go over my captain selection process necessarily in this. I'm talking more general leadership for your program. But again, we can dive into like how do you select captains because I know that's very different from sport to sport and person to person. And I think that's something that we can all learn from collectively on different methods and how we do that. And we can talk about that in the Q&A as well, or you can pop it in the chat right now. Yeah, leaders because they're upperclassmen lead in negative ways. They put down sometimes instead of pulling up. Yeah. Yeah, the call out versus call up analogy. Yeah, my leaders wanted it more than others, so encouragement and words came off as nagging wasn't the intent. Yeah, okay, these are really great. Okay, we're going to talk about the leadership core. This is an intentional approach to develop leaders based on their strength. This is kind of a program-wide approach that you can take to developing leaders. And I'm going to break this down a little bit on how I've implemented this in my program. But we talk about the leadership core. So the core of the people who are, the leaders of your team and setting the tone for your culture. Um, Everybody cannot do everything. And we know that, right? In ourselves as leaders, like we can't be everywhere and do everything and lead in the way that like every athlete needs, right? We have our strengths and so do your players. And this is what I do in my program to kind of help leaders find their voice and find the way that they lead. And so I'll just give you the example of mine, and you can kind of adjust in your mind for how this would work for your number of athletes. So, like I said, I coach a program that has between 3 and 4 teams. I coach volleyball, and so that ends up on any given season being between 36 and 48 girls. I choose, depending on the season, this typically I start to implement in the off season, but I select or I've done an application process where potential leaders of our team want to step into a leadership role. So when I say I select, it's like, okay, well, if you're a returning upperclassman and you've demonstrated some leadership qualities, then like this is somebody that I would want in my leadership core. Other times, and I like this a little bit better, is it's an application. So, so that they are raising their hand and saying like, I want to be a part of the leadership core. And the qualifications for that typically are you have to be an upperclassman. And that's like a really quick little like questionnaire on like what they view their strengths are and things like that. So anyways, whatever process you choose, I choose typically six people who are going to be a part of the leadership core. And these six people I assign based on what I know about their strengths or what I know about their application. I assign them a role. Okay. Now, this role on their team is, and in the program, is something that is simple, but it's focused. It gives them one aspect of leadership that they can own. And that is key. I'll say it again. It gives them one aspect of leadership that they can own rather than expecting them to be everything and do everything. So here are some examples of the roles that I have in our leadership core. So these six leaders who they're like raising their hand. I want to be a part of our leadership core and, the culture of our program. So we have one of our leaders who's responsible for communication. So she is the person, and I actually have a group me with just her right now because this is one of the ways that you can actually help leaders find their voice is I'm feeding them information to put in the main group chat so that it's coming from this leader. So she is sending in things like, hey, reminder, we have an open gym coming up on this day. Here's the time. Hey, reminder, we're wearing our black practice shirts to practice today. Reminder, bus leaves at this time. So she is really the responsible one for like communication. So we obviously want to select somebody who is responsible, who is diligent, who is a good communicator to have and own this role of communication. And this also clears it up to like, okay, well, and also you, like, yeah, I have to kind of prompt her a little bit and make sure that I'm giving her the information so that she has the accurate info. But at the same time, like now there's not this confusion of like which leader is going to be the one to like remind the team of things. Okay. Another leader is in charge of energy. Now, this doesn't mean that no one else can do this, either like in or out of the leadership core, but they are just dialed in on this aspect of leadership. And these can change. Your challenge is going to be to come up with like what this means for your team. But for us, like you're the energy, you're the spark plug. So you want to pick somebody who is obviously like probably more on the extroverted side. They're the one who is like, hey, when practice is lagging, like I'm connecting, I'm getting energy up, like Now, we're not saying you're 100% responsible for the whole vibe of the entire program, the entire team. But when you have one person who is really focused in on like, hey, my job is to keep the energy high in here, like you're going to fund, they're going to be talking more, they're communicating more. They know what's expected of them. The timekeeper. So this is somebody who is making sure that like pre-practice starts on time. Like if people are not getting going with pre-practice, they're responsible for being like, hey, let's do the pre-practice together and kind of making sure that time stays on. If I am doing setter tutor, this is a volleyball term, like I'm doing setter tutor with, my setters in the pre-practice time, I can count on them to make sure that like the flow of the rest of pre-practice gets going. Facilities and equipment. Okay. So this person is responsible for just making sure that there's a clean sweep of things, like that we have all the things that we need when we're going, like traveling, or like making sure that the cage is locked up at the end of the day. Now, I will note that like if one of your leaders is in charge of, one of these things, it doesn't mean that they have to do the entire job. I always tell them like you're just responsible for the final check. So delegate, like, you can make sure that other people are helping you in this role, but like ultimately this falls on you to make sure that everything is locked up at the end. Okay. Um, the social person. Okay. So this is like more team connection outside of practice or outside of training. So somebody who's maybe organizing some of the, just little like get together type stuff. And then just connection within practice. So this is like, hey, are you making sure that you're making connection with like the underclassmen and things like that? So yeah. Oh, great question. 10U softball. I don't know how to pick leaders at this age group. I would rotate them. I would actually make it even simpler, Greg. I would pick three, like, whatever three matter to you, whatever leadership qualities you really, really matter to you. Say it is energy, facilities, equipment, like what would make sense for 10-year-olds, and connection. I don't know, just picking this. And like this week, three players you're choosing for them and like, hey, this is your job this week. This is what you're really going to focus in on. And then next week you would just choose a new three or something like that. So it can rotate throughout. And honestly, like that might actually work well at the high school level too, but I tend to kind of keep the leadership core set throughout the season. Okay. So that is that's kind of the overarching idea. Caitlin, have you ever had managers or trainers have your leadership role for facilities, equipment, or do you always use players? Yeah, I have had managers and trainers do that as well. But I find that I like having it be a player to make sure that like the balls are picked up and like the final sweep of the walk and everything like that. I give more manager job of like make sure that our video equipment and our med kit and like our stat stuff is brought to and from games. But I like having and this is the reason why. I don't like creating this divide of like, hey, players, I'm just gonna like leave stuff out and like, oh, the manager will pick it up. So I want like my players to be responsible for the equipment that they're leaving out at practice or whatever. Okay, so here's how we implement the leadership core. So first of all, identify your leaders. And Greg brought up a great point. This really depends also on like your age of players too. Like, do you want to rotate? Do you want 6? Do you want just 3? I'll tell you, like, just I'm using my program as an example. 6 is a good number for me because of a bonus strategy I'm going to give you in a second. And then decide how you're going to identify them. Is it going to be an application? Are you hand selecting them? Okay, so just decide what that process is. Assign your roles. What is important to your culture? I just gave you 6 examples, but if you're like, I don't like any of those, that's fine. Like, what leadership qualities matter to you? And another question to ask yourself is, what are we lacking in our program, in our culture? Are people always late? Is equipment always being left out? Is energy always low at practice? Like, what are the things that you want to emphasize? And then when you put somebody in charge of it, then it's not like it's going to be solved overnight, but at least you have a plan for like, hey, this person is going to be in charge of that. And then the key is that you have to also make sure that you define the expectations of what this looks like. So if you're the energy leader, like give concrete examples of what this looks like in practice. What does this look like on the bench? What does this look like in a game? What does this look like off the court, or off the field? And so define those roles. And this can be done, with the help of your leaders too. Like this is also something that can be really good for them to identify, like, hey, you are the energy leader. You come up with, what does this look like in practice, matches, in the bench or whatever, like choose some areas where you can like tangibly see this. Okay. So that is the implementation of the leadership core and how you can like develop some of these these leaders that are just ingrained into your culture. And then they're not like, you're not expecting them to do all of the things pertaining to leadership. They are just like really hyper focused on one thing. And you can come up with like better names for this, like more creative names if you'd like, but Okay. Yeah, Janice, what we put on the application. Yeah, I can share that. We're actually going to dive into that tomorrow as well. Jamie, can these change weekly or same the whole season? Yeah, they can change weekly for sure. I keep mine the same the whole season, just because it's one less thing that I have to remember to do. But if you want to put a captain in charge of that, because one thing that we do with our leadership core is we meet every so often. I find weekly meetings like sometimes it just gets to be too much. And so I'm like, hey, we can meet like every other week and just check in. And you could have a captain in charge of like rotating who's in charge of what if you want to do it that way. I just know myself and I probably would not remember to do that. So that's why I just like keep it all the same. Okay, here's a bonus strategy. You don't have to do this, but this is something that if you want to evolve this, okay. Yeah, good question. I'll get to that in a second. If you want to evolve this is something that I do I actually start it in the off season, but sometimes it can get tricky because I mean, it gets tricky because sometimes in my sport, we make cuts. We have, like a lot of people coming out in the off season and doing off season training with us that won't actually be with us in the season because we can only carry 36 to 48 players and we have like 70 that come out and try out and all of that. So you can also just start this at the beginning of your season or even midway if you're like in the season. But what I do is I assign each of these leaders to a squad. Okay. So they are a squad leader for 4 to 6 players in the program. Okay. And if you can't already tell, I like to do things program wide because I know that I'm developing future leaders, I'm developing future talent for varsity. And so we don't do, aside from like team practice, we do a lot of things program wide, not just like varsity, JV, C team, freshman team. Okay. So we try and kind of incorporate this value of unity. And so each of my 6 leaders in the leadership core is assigned to 4 to 6 players, and they're from different teams, but they're like mama duck, mama hen. Okay. They're like in charge of those 4 to 6 players. And what's really cool about this is that these freshmen that are coming in now have this like upperclassman leader as like a point of contact because it can be intimidating coming straight to the head coach and all this. And so they have this point of contact who can answer questions, who can mentor. We do little warm-ups. We're like, hey, get into your squads. They come up with like their, squad names. And they do little things together. And so if you want to take this a step further to allow your leaders to find a little bit more of their voice, you can put them in charge of 4 to 6 players. They get in a group chat together and group me so that they're like sharing things. And so it's a really great way for your leaders to, just have that other layer. So benefits of this, mentorship. Okay. So these other players in the program have a mentor that they're looking to. They've got a point of contact. You're not answering it's like one layer before it gets to you. It goes to like, go to your squad leader and ask that question because they probably know the answer. And then if they can't figure it out, then come to me. Not to like become unapproachable, but sometimes when you're answering, you're like, guys, like your squad leader knows what practice shirt you're wearing. Like just ask them. Okay. Finding their voice. A lot of the challenge of leadership is like, how do I speak up? And it's a lot less intimidating for some of these leaders to speak up and lead a group of 4 to 6 players than it is like an entire program or an entire team. Okay. And then, like I already mentioned, this program unity. Okay. So that is if you want to take it kind of a step further. Yeah, Kelly asked a great question. If someone isn't fulfilling their role, do you replace it? I've never had to do that, but I think part of that is coming back to the expectations. If the expectations are clearly defined on what this role is, then you can always come back to it and have that check-in with, hey, here is your role in our leadership core, and you can have them kind of self-reflect on a scale of 1 to 5. How do you feel like you are, whatever the expectation is, like making sure that that you've swept it. We use the term sweep the sheds based on why am I blinking? The All Blacks rugby team, anyone like read that book, and they have this concept of sweeping the sheds and just making sure that everything is like taken care of at the end of practice. How would you rate yourself? So before I would like wholesale, change them out, I would probably like check in and check back with the expectations. So as you are thinking about this though, go ahead and put in the chat, like, what what's coming to mind for you if you're like, I think I want to do this? What are some of the roles that you are thinking of for your leaders? I'll put up like the examples that I have right here. But anyone coming up with like, yeah, that would be great. And these are kind of some of the roles that I'm playing around with. Yeah, energy for sure. Leadership core justice. I last season I had a standing meeting with my leadership core every week. As I was mentioning, it got to be a little bit much, but um, yeah, if you can manage every week, we would do it Mondays after practice, and we would just check in, and it would be an opportunity to like, hey, what are you hearing anything that we need to address? Sometimes we would do like like leadership studies together, but it gets to be a lot. So I do what is manageable for you. Yeah. Uniform coordinator. Ooh, I like that. Communication DJ. Yeah, DJ, like the vibe check. Uh-huh. Okay. Communication, facilities and equipment, timekeeper, energy. There's also warm-ups. We have our captains typically lead warm-ups, and then once it gets to a certain point in the season, like they kind of know what they're doing, but maybe you do have somebody who's in charge of like warm-ups. Communication, connection. Oh yeah, spiritual, if you're at a Christian school. Yeah, good energy versus bad energy. I like that. Yeah, my senior team only has 11 athletes. I wouldn't need six, but I love the communication, energy, and social. Yeah, for sure. Yoga queen. I like that. I like it, Julie. You're doing some new age stuff. Okay, goal driver, energy driver, relation. Oh, Kelly, I like this driver term. Yeah, Kelly, is it okay if we steal that from you? Yeah, process driver. That's great. I like that image. Okay, fit check leader. Okay, you guys are way more creative with your roles than I am. So, yes, I love it. Connection leader. Yeah, those are great. 11U volleyball. That's awesome. Again, scale this down if you're coaching little ones, like scale it down to what makes sense. You might not need a full sale six and like everyone's in charge of little things like, just or maybe it's just two and it changes from week to week, but it still is developing that leadership quality in them. Okay. All right. Last little thing. Oh, hey, look at that. Okay. The number one way that when we're talking about leadership, number one way that your leaders influence your team is the same way that you influence your team, and that is through your presence. And if you're wondering why this embarrassing picture of me is up right here, this is another bonus tip that you can steal. If you really want to impress your team, every year, this is just okay, you don't actually have to do this, but for some reason, I, as a person, really love taking songs and turning them into parodies. And in my leadership journey as a coach, because we can't really talk about your own leaders on your team without kind of reflecting on your own leadership. And one of the main leadership traits that I try and teach my leaders is you've got to be yourself. And one thing as a coach that I think I struggled with for the first half of my coaching career, which is still when you look at it, it's still pretty young, was trying to be somebody I wasn't. I was trying to coach how like I was coached. I thought I had just to be a hard ass and that's the only way you could do it. And I was bringing in very little of my own personality. And so I decided I was going to go out on a limb. We have a talent show that we do every year and I'm going to go all out. I'm going to create a parody of a song, a Miley Cyrus song. I'm going to change the words, make it applicable to my team. I'm going to do a performance. My team was like, what the heck? But it was the most fun / super embarrassing thing. And now it's become a tradition 6 years running. And I don't know what I'm going to do next year because it just keeps getting like more and more and more and more. Like red sequin jumpsuit that came from Goodwill. That's like 3 sizes too small. Yeah. But this is one of the things that for me as a leader and as a coach is like, how can I bring more of me into my coaching and into my leadership? Because that is also what I'm trying to teach my leaders to do too, is that the best way you can lead is to be more of yourself. Yes, you do need to develop specific qualities around connection and communication and making good choices and setting standards. But when you are leading and leaning into who you are and your presence, that's really where the best leadership comes from. Okay. Yeah, I hear you. I know. Like as a young coach, I got criticized for being soft, and we could go off on that, right? Like kind of the double standard that exists in coaching, especially for women. And I became a better coach when I leaned into like my coaching style more and more. And that doesn't mean you have to get yourself in a red sequin jumpsuit. Although, you know what? I know that this is a free boot camp, but this tip right here, sequin jumpsuit, you know what? I'm giving you that for free. Okay. All right. But let's go back to your leaders. Their presence really does set the tone as well. Like when we talk about how your leaders show up and their presence, their court presence, their field presence, their like what they're doing before practice, what they're doing after practice, how they're showing up like in practice, how they handle mistakes and how fast they come back, their energy, their confidence, their ability to stay composed under pressure. Like all of those things, it does not matter if your leader has the role of a captain and they're communicating in the group chat and they're doing all the connection things outside. If they're breaking down after a mistake, you better believe they're impacting your team in a negative way. Okay. And same with, their energy, their confidence, the pressure, like all of that. If they can't handle those things, then like you're a leader, the person that people are looking to, and whether they hold a leadership role or not, are definitely impacting the success of your team. And so that is why tomorrow we are really diving into the winning edge system, because building not just your leaders, but your team up with skills so that they can be, I really hate to use the word mentally tough. In fact, like I only use it because it's like a easily recognizable term, because it's like, mentally tough doesn't actually mean like, shove it down, forget your emotions and grind through. No, it's like, do they have skills to get over a mistake fast, right? You've heard me probably talk about the snapback routine a lot. That seems to be popular on TikTok right now, like me talking about snapback routines. But this is one of the most essential skills that not just your leaders, that your athletes can have to get over a mistake fast, because the athlete that can get over a mistake fastest is the one that probably is going to be the most successful. Okay. If it's taking your team and your leaders 5 minutes to get over a mistake and they're sulking around and their heads down and you got to pull them off the court, that is a problem. And so if you can give them a skill where they can come back from a mistake in 3 seconds, now all of a sudden your team is moving on. You guys are good to go. You're ready in the present moment. Same with dealing with pressure, especially what we talked about on day one. If you have teams who are talented, and you're like, I know what I've got in front of me and we need that secret sauce. We need an edge. We're breaking that all down tomorrow on how you can do this in a really simple way. Okay, today's action, you already started it a little bit in the chat, is define the roles of your leadership core. Like what matters to you when it comes to culture, what matters to you when it comes to leadership, and can you assign a driver? I love that term. Okay, a driver of that value, and then think about how you might be assigning that to different leaders on your team. Okay, all right. Some next steps. Today's actually the last day to apply for our scholarship for our plug and play elite mental game for teams. This is our plug and play mental training system for teams. It's basically the program that you can use as a coach. You've got all the curriculum and resources that you need to literally plug and play for your team. You do not need to become a sports psychologist to teach mental skills to your athletes. You do not need to spend a ton of time, talking about it in order to teach these skills. So our plug and play program is exactly what I use. It's very, very simple way for you to just get your team together. You play the short videos, lead a quick discussion, and they've got these skills that they're applying into their practice. So today's the last day to apply for a scholarship to get we're giving away one free access to this. Our normal price of the program is $797, I believe. Yeah, $797. You actually, we have the scholarship application, but tomorrow I'm talking about the discount that all coaches are getting for being a part of the boot camp as well. But today we're going to do a little behind the scenes look right before our visualization for today. So if you want to hop on a little bit early, so at 11:30 Pacific, 1:30 Central, 2:30 Eastern, I'm giving you a behind the scenes look at like what the plug and play elite mental game is. Like what is the program do? What does it look like? What are the lessons that we cover? Like how would you actually facilitate this with your team? So I'm just kind of showing you a behind the scenes to know like, A, do you want to apply for the scholarship for one? B, when we talk about it tomorrow and you want to incorporate this into your program, or maybe you're like, I want to talk to my AD about this, or I want to like see if we get boosters to fund this, or maybe just even like, I'm going to jump in as a coach and do this because my team needs it. This will give you an opportunity to look at what it is and get any questions answered as well. So that is going on right before our visualization today. Actually, today we're doing a little breathwork strategy. So a little breathwork technique that you can be using with your team, but I want you to try it on yourself first. And then as a reminder, this is our welcome page. This is your one-stop shop for everything. So you've got everything you need here. You got our calendar, everything that's going on. We've got, the rest of today, but then tomorrow is our last day of official training. Since we're talking about the mental game, we're also doing some Q&A, so bring your questions there. On Friday, we're actually going to bring on a panel of coaches, and they're going to be talking about like basically their experience with implementing mental training into their program. They are coaches who have been through our plug and play program. Actually, I think Amy is here. So she's going to be coming on the panel. You can ask them questions. You can also ask me questions as well. There she is. Hi, Amy. Playbook, if you want that, there's still time to enter the raffle. So to get more raffle tickets, we'll be drawing our winner for the raffle on Monday. So you still have time to do that. Here's where you can apply for the plug and play scholarship. And then all of the replays are down here as well. These links straight out to our YouTube channel. Okay, speaking of that, let's go to this one. Okay, hello. Let's pick another coffee winner for somebody who commented on yesterday's post with their action, who did their homework. Let's see here. I'm going to go with, let me see here. Let's see, Becky. Becky, are you on live? If you're not, don't worry, we'll follow up with you. Becky, your next coffee is on us. And also, if any of you are track and field coaches and want to help Becky out, comment on her post with your ideas there. Okay, everybody. Yeah, woohoo, Becky. Let's hype her up. Okay, let's make sure that I am covering everything I'm supposed to cover and not forgetting anything else. I think we're good. All right, make sure that you do your action for today. So as soon as the replay is posted, we'll send you an email. We'll also send you that link to jump on for the behind the scenes of the plug and play elite mental game. And for like, basically that's right before the visualization for today. So you just stay on. And then I'll see you tomorrow for implementing mental training skills in a very simple way, plus some Q&A. So we'll kind of wrap this thing up. All right, everyone. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. I'll see you in the comments of YouTube, and I'll see you on our behind the scenes and visualization later today. See you later.